Hello, dear students. My name is Rajni Chatwal, and this poetry session is for Class 12 English Core from the NCERT textbook Flamingo. Today, we'll be doing the poem titled A Thing of Beauty by John Keats. Before we begin with the explanation of the poem, let's talk about the poet John Keats. A literary legend who lived during Romantic period, John Keats was an English romantic lyric poet. He dedicated his life to the perfection of poetry. Although trained to be a surgeon, he realized that poetry was his true vocation. He published his first volume of poems in 1817. Through the arena of his 150 poems, he aimed to accentuate extreme emotions by emphasizing on natural imagery. Being a romantic poet, he talked of love, beauty, and every marvelous thing that he perceived in the world. His very famous lines that are oft quoted are Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. And I really appreciate these lines. I hope you all will also like these lines. So let's begin the poem today, A Thing of Beauty. Before we begin, I request you all to keep your textbooks open on page number 98. That's right, page number 98. Very good. So let's begin the poem. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases, it will never pass into nothingness. In these opening lines, the poet is expressing the idea that a thing of beauty gives everlasting joy that leaves an indelible imprint on our impressionable minds. Its exquisite beauty and charm increases with the passage of time as we tend to associate beautiful memories with these objects. As for example, a rose, it is a beautiful thing, and but whenever we see it, we are reminded of so many past lovely experiences associated with the rose. It's human nature that we tend to forget something that that gives us some kind of despair or sadness, but we always remember something that is beautiful and the happiness that is associated with it. So these beautiful images, they are stored in our memory lane and we never tend to forget them as they provide us solace and ecstasy whenever we think about them. That is why the poet says, a thing of beauty is a joy forever. I hope I'm clear to all of you with these lines. Now, in the next few lines, the poet says, but will keep a bar quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams, and health and quiet breathing. Now, what is a bar quiet? What is the poet referring to? He is referring to a shady place under the trees that gives a pleasant respite to the tired travelers. Similarly, these beautiful objects of nature, they are like a respite to the tired soul, right? That is lost in the humdrum of the modern life. So here a bar quiet has a metaphorical interpretation by referring to the mental and the pleasant respite due to the beautiful objects. Then the poet emphasizes the joy that these beautiful things give, that is akin to the joy of the blissful and the sleep that is full of pleasant dreams. And here the sweet dreams again has a metaphorical inference because there is an implied meaning, that is, it is a blissful life when we think of something beautiful or when we perceive something beautiful. They refresh us, they relax us by deriving away the restlessness from our lives. These beautiful memories, they revive those pleasant and ecstatic moods from a mental setup and that we have experienced when we breathe quietly and meditate for peace of mind and soul. Then in the next lines, the poet says, Therefore, on every morrow are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to this earth, spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth, of the noble natures, of inhuman dearth, of gloomy days of all the unhealthy and the overdarkened ways. Now, here the poet is emphasizing that these beautiful objects bind us to this earth, and with every passing day, every morning, we try to weave. We try to weave a beautiful string of flowers or the memories that support us, that strengthen us, and motivate us to live our lives happily, which would otherwise have not been possible, and life would have been very painful. Why? Because these beautiful objects, they give us solace and strength to bear the gloom and the sadness, the despair and hopelessness and disappointments that are so integral in our lives. We often suffer pain and loss of hope due to the dearth of goodness and the nobility in the human nature. Now here, noble nature is an example of what? Any guesses? Yes, what is the literary device when he says noble natures? Yes, that's right. You guessed it right. That is alliteration. Why? Because the consonant N is being repeated, right? Now, in spite of the darkness and the gloomy days, the man tries to search for some kind of happiness in some form of beauty, which drives away this sadness of unpleasant feelings of despair from our lives. Now, here the phrase gloomy days. Now, what is it an example of? Any literary device? Anything that comes to your mind? Yes? Guess, guess, guess? Okay, it is an example of transferred epithet. Children, do you know what is transferred epithet? Well, it is a figure of speech in which a modifier, usually an adjective, qualifies a noun other than the person or the thing it's actually describing. For example, in this phrase, gloomy days, the days are not in themselves gloomy, but the speaker experiences gloom or the sadness because of the days that are spent on the earth, which is full of despondence and dearth of noble nature. Right? So, as we all know, life is not a bed of roses, but it's full of trials and tribulations which end up in our suffering. These unhealthy and overdarkened ways, they refer to many obstacles in the journey of life which we need to cross and transcend. Here the beautiful objects, they come as a handy tool. Then the poet says, made for a searching yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall. So, in spite of the gloom and the hopelessness that overshadows and darkens our ways, we are able to find our happiness in the beautiful objects of nature. The word pall, it means a covering like a shroud. Now, this word pall has a metaphorical interpretation. Why? Because it refers to the sadness in the deepest resources of our soul. Then the poet says, such the sun, the moon, the trees, old and young, sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep, and such are the daffodils with the green world they live in. Now here he is referring to different images of the bounties of nature that sustain us, that nurture us, nourish us, and motivate us to lead a healthy and pleasant life. These are the natural objects that are found in the physical form in our nature, like sun, moon, old and young trees that provide a shady bliss to the tired travelers. Further, the simple sheep. Now, simple sheep over here is a biblical reference. You know how and why? Because we all know that Jesus Christ is known as shepherd in Bible, and and here the followers of Christ, they were very innocent and simple people. So Keats finds beauty in innocence and simplicity. So this is a metaphorical reference to the simplicity and the innocence that has implied beauty in it, right? Then he says, the daffodils blossoming in the midst of the greenery, they also present a beautiful sight. The poet says, the clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make, against the hot season the mid-forest break, rich with the sprinkling of the fair musk roses blooming. So here the phrase again, cooling covert. Here the consonant C is being repeated. So what is the literary device? Yes, this time you guessed it right. That is alliteration. So here the poet has used vivid imagery by referring to clear streams that have a cooling effect on themselves and on the onlookers in the hot season. And the musk roses blooming in the middle of the forest present a beautiful sight, an enchanting and captivating sight to all. In the next lines, the poet says, "And such is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead, all the lovely tales that we have heard or read." Here in these lines, the poet is using the literary device of imagery. How? He's referring to the spiritual beauty that is, that is found in the grandeur of the dooms. Now, this image vividly exhibits the picture of brave people and their majestic deeds, which have always cast a spell of heroism among the readers or the listeners. So you can also well imagine, whenever you have read or you have heard about the story of some heroic soldiers of past, you're always motivated. Yes or no? Yes, we are always motivated to lead a noble life, to do something for the humanity. So their tales have some kind of spiritual beauty. They have the grandeur, the majestic splendor. Yes. So then he says, the mighty dead here refers to those great men and warriors who glorified death by embracing it most gracefully and for the welfare of humanity. Now he's used this word mighty dead, the majestic death of these mighty people, the mighty dead, to emphasize that there is beauty in their magnificent death, and not only in birth and growth. Well, the phrase mighty dead is an example of a literary device. Yes, any guesses? Okay, I'll tell you, this is an oxymoron. Well, children, what is an oxymoron? An oxymoron is a phrase that combines two words that seem to be the opposite of each other. And here, mighty dead. And here, the mighty dead, it is using two words that are opposing to each other. Mighty is referring to something who is to someone and something that is accomplished, that who's accomplished something great achievement in his lifetime. But here this phrase mighty is written along with dead. So the two opposing words are written. So this is an example of oxymoron, right? And then the poet says, in the last line, he says, an endless fountain of immortal drink pouring unto us from the heavens brink. Now, in these lines, he is referring to the tales of the brave and the heroic people. These legends, they are either heard or read in our lifetime, and they have always, sustained us, nurtured us, and motivated us for a noble living. Herein lies the beauty and the splendor that is associated with their death. Their tales are just like a perennial fountain, which is the elixir of life as a source of inspiration. The phrase immortal drink, it has again a metaphorical inference as it points to the holy water received from the brink of heavens, pointing to the fact that physical or natural or spiritual beauty is the greatest gift of God that is showered from the heavens above. I hope you've understood now the poem. Kindly go through the poem, and before we end, let's sum up with the theme, the list of the beautiful objects, their qualities and the things that cause pain and sorrow. And now let's come to the theme of the poem. Yes, we'll discuss certain value points. So what is the theme that you've drawn from the poem? What have you learned from this poem? Yes, that's right. A thing of beauty, it gives us an everlasting joy. Then next would be, it has a soothing and an embalming effect. Yes. And next would be, it's a great stress buster, helping us to cope up with the negativity of life. Yes. And next would be, it makes our existence significant. Next, all the natural aspects and the spiritual aspects, that are associated with beauty are God's gifts showered from the heavens above. It is an integral bond with the beautiful objects that is needed to enjoy a blissful life. Now, my next question would be, list the things of beauty that are mentioned by the poet in the poem. So, we have many physical aspects of beauty. For example, sun, moon, deep forests, old and young trees. Then, secondly, he's talking about simple sheep, that is, those innocent, simple people, the followers of Christ. Then he's talking about daffodils, the clear streams, musk roses, and then the poet talks about the heroic aspect of the beauty, the spiritual aspect of the beauty that is associated with the heroic tales of the great warriors and their tales from the classics and the scriptures. Now, our next question would be, what are the qualities of a thing of beauty? Yes, you guessed it right. It gives us everlasting joy. It has no age barriers, no time period barriers, and it never goes waste. Yes, then he says it's a powerful shelter, it's a respite, it's relaxing, comforting, and invigorating. Next question would be, what are the things that cause pain? Yes, you guessed it right. We've already read in the poem. What are they? They are gloomy and sad days, their lack of noble natures, ill health, over darkened ways. Yes, all this gives us despair, despondence, ill will, hatred, anxiety. Yes, am I right? Okay. My next question is, what is the form of writing verses in the poem? Any guesses? Well, it's written in rhyming couplets, which are known as heroic couplets, and the rhyme scheme is AABB. In the end, I would like to ask you, what is the message that has been conveyed by the poem? Yes, you are right. What is it? A thing of beauty is a joy forever. It transcends the time and dispels the negativity and darkness, bringing forth the blessings of God from the heavens, like the holy water that is the elixir of life, which sustains us, holds us, and nurtures us in midst of all our trials and tribulations. I hope the poem is clear to all of you. Thank you and have a nice day.